You finished your book. Congratulations. It's a huge accomplishment. So I hope you're proud of yourself. Now that you have an edited, polished, ready to go manuscript, what's next? Hi, and welcome to Hearth Talks. I'm Diane Hatz, author and interactivist, and today I'm sharing a 5-part series on types of publishing. It got really long, like really long for one video. So I'm going to break down the ways you can get your book published into separate videos. This is part of the overall Hearth Talks. We will still have our usual videos and talks on finding yourself, purpose, building community, etc. But I'm doing a sub-series on writing and publishing, indie writing and publishing. So today we're going to focus on traditional publishing, the way books were put out in the world like 20 or more years ago, and some still do today, though lots changed in the past few years. In future videos, I'll discuss other ways to publish, including indie, small presses, hybrid, and more. I was a beginner not too long ago, and I was trying to figure out the best way to get my book to the world. I'll try to keep this simple, and I'll share some of my experiences, so hopefully it'll help you decide what's best for you. Just know there's no one right way to get your book published. You need to discover what works best for you. So let's start with old school publishing, which is called traditional publishing. When most people think of getting their book out to the world, they think of big publishing houses, book deals, agents, advances, and long lunches with the literary elite in New York City. Think Penguin House, HarperCollins, Macmillan. Well, there's only 2 more, Simon & Schuster and Hachette Book Group. Those are what the publishing world refers to as the Big Five. Within them are a zillion smaller imprints, but these are the 5 major publishing houses. In order to go Big Five, you must get a literary agent. The big companies won't even look or glance or peek in the direction of your manuscript without an agent. And the bad news is that these days, it's just as hard to find an agent as it is to get a publisher. The corporate publishing industry has been downsizing like crazy, so a ton of editors and agents have lost their jobs. I know some writers who've been trying to get an agent for literally years, so you need patience and a lot of time to go traditional. You also have to accept that your agent will most likely want you to make changes with your work. When I wrote the first version of Rock Gods and Messy Monsters, it was called Rock Gods of Oct back then. This is many years ago, but I met with an agent to see if she'd represent my work. She didn't ask why I wrote certain scenes, the meaning behind certain characters, and frankly, I don't think she even read the whole thing. But she told me I'd have to make a lot of changes. Yeah, I have to do this and that character, whatever, whatever. And it just felt like a power trip. And this is me, just sharing my experience. So I was like, F that, and I didn't go back. And I know, it's my issue. But I'm not going to produce a piece of art and have someone who doesn't understand my writing tell me to change things, especially someone I don't think even read it. I mean, do art dealers tell painters to change their work once they've finished a painting? But if you want to find an agent, check out Writer's Market or Query Tracker. There are good ones out there. I've never used those services. I was doing this before computers, really. But most writers I know seem to use Query Tracker. So let's say you sign with an agent and make all the changes she wants. The agent then shops your book to publishers. This process can literally take a year, even 2. So it can take a year or 2 to find an agent, and then you've got another year or 2 to find a publisher. The harsh reality today is that if you're offered in advance, and there's no guarantee anymore, but if you are, it'll be small unless you're famous or you have 10 million followers on social media. And you pay the advance back through the royalties that you make. There are no handouts. I don't know corporate publishing, but I worked in the corporate music industry in New York City, and I know that when an artist gets signed, they'll get something of an advance. That advance comes out of their royalties, as does the cost for making the album, promoting it, and even things like the limo rides to events and such. There's a lot of creative accounting that goes on, and I'm sure publishing is the same. I used to tell people they shouldn't expect any more money after the advance. On top of that, the royalty rate you'll be offered for your book will be extremely small, like maybe 75% less than if you published on your own. But let's say your agent finds an interested publisher and you sign a deal. Publishing houses have in-house editors, which means odds are you'll have to make even more edits to your book. And that means less creative control for you and more time it'll take to get the book out into the world. I don't know about you, but after the 16 edits on Light of Wounds, I was done. Done. it's the best I can do. So I wouldn't have the strength to do more edits. And I can't imagine having to change a character or a scene that I don't think is right. You lose a lot of control when you go through a big house. You don't have say over your book cover, and you often don't have say over your title of your book. So it's important you take that into consideration when you're deciding how to publish. If you don't like what your publisher does, there really isn't anything you can do. One of the upsides to a large publisher is that they will handle the editing, cover design, and distribution of your work. There's a learning curve for that when you do it yourself, but you don't have any say in what they decide to do. Another upside is that you'll have a shot of getting your book into a brick and mortar bookstore. How long it'll stay on the shelves is another thing. Most big publishers will launch your book and maybe market it for a month, 3 if you're lucky. But if it doesn't take off, that's the end of the help you're going to get from the publishing house. They'll be on to the next writer, next author on their roster. That's how it was in music. So you'll be left to market your work and pay for it yourself. You can also get your indie book sold in stores, but you'll be in charge of approaching independent stores, and it's a lot of work. I'm not sure about a chain store like Barnes & Noble anymore. I was originally going to say, it's not worth it. They're not going to take it. But I was just in a Facebook group for indie writers, and there were photos of these women they were taking photos of themselves at Barnes & Noble with their book on the shelf behind them. And they said that the local store makes an effort to sell local authors, and they did stock their book. I tried the Barnes & Noble that just opened here in Santa Fe, and they said no. They said, a reader could come in and order the book from them and they could have it delivered, but they won't stock it on the shelf. So these women in Facebook gave me the gumption. I'm going back. But then again, it's Barnes & Noble. When you get to selling your book, I'll do a video later, but I sell my book in a store called The Crow's Nest. It's an oddity store, like a lot of dead things and two-headed chickens and witchy things. But my book actually goes in well with the stuff that's sold there. So there are alternative avenues you can take rather than just a typical bookstore. So another upside I see to traditional publishing is that they'll launch your book and give you a month or two of attention. So you can get exposure when your book comes out. If it gains traction, it starts selling, you might end up doing okay. If it doesn't start selling, well, that could be the end of your big 5 publishing career. Most writers only get 1 book deal, 2 if you're lucky, meaning you'll sign a contract for 1 or 2 books, but you might get dropped after that. Another upside is that you can see your work on a shelf in bookstores, which even I have to say is cool. Okay. I will confess. When Rock Gods and Messy Monsters came out, I went into some bookstores and put it on the shelf and took pictures like it was stocked there. When I was in New York City, there's a Harry Potter store, and downstairs they have the books of the Harry J.K. Rowling books. So I put Rock Gods up, it's just, I don't know. Made me feel good. It's the little things. So as I mentioned, I worked in a corporate record company in New York City a long time ago, and I know what goes on in there, and I know publishing is no different. One of my bosses in marketing spent over 6 months buying a condo, not marketing the artists on the roster. Another took up painting and would watercolor in his corner suite and yell at me on a regular basis. I actually started what is now Rock Gods and Messy Monsters sitting in that job because I had nothing to do. He would do nothing until 4 p.m. And then he would make me run around and deliver memos. If you read Rock Gods and Messy Monsters, you'll understand. It's surreal and it's sci-fi, humor, sci-fi, urban fantasy, but it is based on reality. So I sat in an executive meeting once and I heard a former boss say that the musicians on the label should all have second jobs. This was as they were coming up with new ways for taking more royalties from the bands. They did such creative accounting or creative marketing that it was nearly impossible for a band to see any money outside their initial advance. And I'm positive publishing's the same. So I have to be honest, I am extremely biased, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. My bubble was burst. My fantasy around big publishing and glamour. And I worked at Epic Records, and I remember one day just screaming down the hallway, we could be selling tampons and nobody would know the difference. Crickets. It was true. It was very cookie cutter, I'm glad I got to do it and I got to party and I got to go out on other people's expense accounts, but If you're the artist, yeah, I don't think you want to know what goes on behind the scenes. Though, having said that, if Big Five comes to me and offers me $10 million, maybe I would sell my soul. I mean, I'm human. So, barring that not happening, I do want to say I'm proud. I have my own publishing company. Like, I might be small. I might be just publishing me. I might only have a few books. I might not have sold much, but I sold enough to get into the Authors Guild, and I'm not giving up. So, if you are a writer and you decide to go the indie path, there's pride in that. I mean, there's something to be said for doing all the work yourself. So to sum up, the pros: industry credibility. It can open some doors that indie publishing might not be able to still, but this is rapidly changing. For example, almost all book awards now allow indie books. You're not going to have like Sway, a big publisher, like an editor at a publishing house might have with the committee, and that stuff does go on. But you can still apply for them. And many independent and alternative stores are open to selling a local indie author's work. You just have to make sure you go on Ingram Spark. Again, more on that later. Second pro, there's no upfront costs. The publisher takes on the financial risk. And to be honest, it does cost a bit to publish your own work. You can do it for basically nothing, but you really need to pay for cover art. I did another video on editing. I don't think you have to pay for editing, but you should at least pay for editing software. Find beta readers, so you might want to pay to do some promos. I saw a Substack where someone broke down how much it cost for her to do her first book, and it came out to about $1,000. I spent more because I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm a throw spaghetti at the wall kind of person. With a traditional publisher, because you don't have the say or control, the editing, cover design, and the distribution is less work for you. And then there's the potential for wider bookstore placement. So the cons: it's really hard to get in. Less than 1% of manuscripts submitted to agents are accepted by publishers, and you have to get the agent first. So just because you get accepted, it doesn't mean your book's going to get the kind of attention it should. And depending on your contract, the publisher might also own the rights to your work, which means you might not be able to get it back. So if your book, goes to a major publisher and it doesn't do well, you might not have the IP, the intellectual property, or the right to take that book back and market it yourself. So be very, very careful if you're going traditional that you read the fine print in the contract. Another con is, like I mentioned, are the long timelines. It can literally take years. And my age, I don't have that time. I just don't have years to wait. Not just the BS and the emotional ups and downs. There's plenty of it when you indie publish it, but just rejection after rejection after rejection can take a toll. Also, another con, low royalties. Authors typically earn like a 5 to 18% royalty from a book, but you can make a 70% royalty if you do it yourself. You have less creative control. Like I said, with the book cover, publishers have final say on cover design, title, and sometimes even the content. So I also keep hearing about writers who are being unceremoniously dropped from big publishers. So there's no guarantee that even if you get a publishing deal, that the publisher will want another book from you, or that they'll do anything beyond the launch. So being published through a large publisher is a dream some people have had most of their lives. If that's you, don't listen to me. Just try it. I think what I would suggest, because I tried it, give yourself a time frame. Say 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year. Give yourself a time frame and try to find an agent. And if you get an agent, fantastic, congratulations. Then give yourself another time frame for the agent to get a big publisher. And then if it doesn't happen within, if you say a year, then you can indie publish. I hope you listen to what I'm saying, but don't feel that you have to do it this way. Though being biased, and I have seen what happens there. I'm indie all the way. I hope you will join me on the indie route. And like I said, the rejections, they really can have an effect. I remember, I put my writing aside for 15 years or so because I just couldn't handle the rejections, which is brutal. So what do you think about publishing? I will in future videos. I'm going to get into the other types of publishing. So maybe at the end, there'll be like a wrap up so I can sum up all of them. I just wanted to do a deep dive into each of them. The next one on the series, I Don't know when it'll be out, but the next one on the series will be on indie publishing. Yay! My favorite topic. Thank you for joining me here today at Hearth Talks. Now go get your book out into the world. Happy day.